Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 280 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians remain defiant, bracing for the new wave of crippling Russian missile strikes. And something unusual happened earlier this week. Russian planes took off like they were about to launch their next series of long-range cruise missiles. All the air sirens across Ukraine went off. Everyone had to take shelter underground, and at the last second, the Russian planes called it off. Either it was a fake out, or they weren't ready, or something. But Ukrainian officials were in a defiant mood on Tuesday in the face of a possible new wave of Russian missile strikes, as officials nationwide announced preparations for renewed Kremlin attacks against the national power grid. So more than likely, another round of these missile attacks will be happening later this week, next week, the week after. But eventually, I think Russia is going to realize this plan isn't going to work, the plan of freezing out Ukraine this winter. So at some point, Russia is going to stop wasting hundreds of millions of dollars worth of missiles to target Ukraine's power grid. And the Ukrainians are getting pretty good at shooting down these very expensive long-range missiles. And we know that Russia is already preparing their people for this plan to fail, because there's a clip now on Russian state TV, the first commentator to start publicly saying, this isn't going to work. Attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure to get them to surrender or get them to negotiate away the Donbass region, it's not going to work. So let's watch about 1 minute of this clip in which one commentator states the obvious, and then the rest of the commentators are going to put on some theater and freak out saying, no, this brilliant plan for sure will work.
Во-первых, надо сказать, что на Украине достаточно быстро научились восстанавливать энергосистему и теплоснабжение. В ряде случаев, за сутки восстанавливается.
В этот раз
во-вторых, вот эти 20 пунктов, которые не работают, это по сравнению с теми, которые 80 работают, это совсем мелочи. Потому что работают люди, заряжают телефоны, приходят туда и так далее.
Нет на восстановление энергосистемы чисто технически. Их нет даже на Западе в таком количестве. Но это неправда.
Но есть
Они сегодня не восстанавливают.
Слушайте,
они говорят, что в Киеве восстановили полностью электроснабжение. Люди оттуда звонят, говорят, мне 5 дней электричества. Что вы рассказываете?
Только неделю назад, на прошлой неделе поступили генераторы
из Германии. Какие генераторы? У них 20%.
Речь не идет о том, что там все будет прекрасно и хорошо. Но то, что они в состоянии эту зиму прожить, перетерпеть, это совершенно ясно.
3-5 лет.
So this Russian commentator wouldn't be allowed to say this, that the Ukrainians will easily survive this winter despite all of these attacks, unless the Kremlin was okay with him saying it to get their audience prepared for this eventual failure of this plan. But Russian propagandists, they love these long-range missile strikes. They know that their soldiers on the ground are trash and can't advance, let alone hold territory. So they do want to continue using long-range missiles to terrorize the Ukrainian population. The only problem is they're eventually going to run out. So here is Sergei Mikheyev, and he's calling for Russia to step up missile strikes on Ukrainian critical infrastructure in order to create a massive humanitarian crisis, leading to another 10 to 15 million Ukrainian refugees leaving the country.
Вот украинцам кое-что сказать, да, как бы. Слушайте, но если вы так свято верите в то, что вас так любят, что же они вас здесь-то держат? Ну пусть заберут туда. Ну ладно армия, ладно те, кто воюет, понятно. Но всех-то остальных пусть заберут в Америку.
Таким образом, Украина вступит в ЕС и НАТО по частям населения.
Да, конечно.
Но не страной.
Пусть Америка, мы даже готовы дать им, вот зерновая сделка есть, к ней масса вопросов, но тем не менее, давайте с американцами заключим гуманитарную сделку. Пусть они пришлют сюда 100 пароходов, так сказать, да, и будем из Одессы выводить и туда, вперед, ту, как бы на Америку и привет. Вот то были философские пароходы, а эти вот будут гуманитарные пароходы. Я говорю совершенно серьезно. Ну, да, господа украинцы, вы подумайте об этом. Вы верите в помощь Запада? Вот если бы они вас накормили, напоили, так сказать, и спать уложили у себя там, это была бы помощь Запада. А теперь, так сказать, на более серьезной ноте, действительно, нам надо сделать так, чтобы Украина
So this is Russia saying either love Russia or leave Russia. We've claimed this land as Russian land, and if you don't want to live in Russia, then go to America, go to Europe, leave Russia. Russia never cared about these people. This was never a liberation operation. They don't care if Ukrainians live or die or stay. All they want is the lands, the oil and gas reserves, the farming lands, the coastline of the Black Sea. That's all that Russia cares about, and they're admitting it on state TV. But the problem Russia has is messaging. We know exactly what the Ukrainians want prior to going to negotiations. But what does Russia actually want? Here's an article from the Moscow Times. Is Russia slowly embracing realpolitik in Ukraine? So Dmitry Peskov, the man charged with sharing Putin's views with the rest of the world, last week denied that the Kremlin was attempting to topple the Ukrainian government or bring about regime change. This surprising reversal suggests that Moscow may now finally be prepared to treat Zelensky as Ukraine's legitimately elected leader. So what is the goal of the Russian state? Denazification is pretty vague when there aren't any Nazis in Kyiv. So what exactly has Russia been trying to do these last 10 months? If you're a military leader, how do you take the marching orders of de-Satanization to the battlefield? This might be why Russia's military is performing so terribly, because the messaging from the top is confusing. Do they want to replace Zelensky? Do they not want to replace Zelensky? I can't even tell you at this point. But there is one member of the Russian parliament this week who gave away the whole game. What is the mindset and philosophy of the Kremlin, of the Russian state? Her name is Elena Drapeko, member of the Russian parliament, and she just admits what this whole war has been about this entire time.
Григорий, на что вы отвечаете тем людям, которые обвиняют Россию в нападении?
Эти люди воспринимают Украину как другую страну, нам чуждую, понимаешь? Вот как если бы мы напали на Францию. А Украина – это часть наша. Там русские ребята, русские люди. Причем не только в Донбассе. Они по всей Украине. И Одесса – русский город. И Харьков – русский город, понимаете? И для меня, для моего поколения это вообще не вопрос. Это часть истории, это часть моей страны. Для нового поколения, наверное, как бы вот эта граница существует, а для нас ее нет. И я понимаю Путина, который до последнего тянул, чтобы не начинать эту операцию. И я понимаю, что, наверное, и он не рассчитывал на такой долг.
So this woman is genuinely confused, saying, why is the West responding this way? We didn't attack France. We would never attack France. We attacked Ukraine because Ukraine is ours. Ukraine is our vassal state. For centuries, the Ukrainian people have been subjugated to serve the Russians in Moscow. They belong to us. Their land belongs to us. So, of course, yeah, if the government, if Ukraine has a revolution and we can no longer directly control their politicians, we're going to take back what's rightfully ours. Similar to the way that Moscow indirectly controls Belarus through Lukashenko, if Russia couldn't indirectly control the politics and economy of the Ukrainian state, then they were always going to send their military in to take back what is rightfully theirs. The idea or concept that Ukraine could be an independent, democratic state capable of making its own decisions, to older people in Russia, this is inconceivable. They view Kharkiv as a Russian city, Odessa as a Russian city, Kyiv as a Russian city, and they're never going to give up on this idea that these people and this land belongs to the Russians of Moscow and St. Petersburg. But they're losing this war. Russian artillery advantage is diminishing. For a variety of reasons, the ratio of Russian artillery volleys compared to the Ukrainian ones is decreasing. So more than likely, Russia is still launching more artillery rounds than the Ukrainians, but the Russians are garbage at it. They're very inaccurate. They're just blanket firing everything they got, hoping to hit something, whereas the Ukrainians are being given, for example, the M777 and Excalibur rounds, much more precise. They're being more surgical in what they're trying to destroy with their artillery in response. And the key weapon that has been kicking the Russians' ass for the last 4 months is the M270, the HIMARS, and the Mars 2. Here is Maria Avdieva reporting from the liberated city of Kherson, and she wants to show you what are the results of these HIMARS being introduced into the war for the Ukrainians.
Ukrainian Kherson. Behind me is the building where Russian units were located, and Kadyrov unit as well as one of them. The ammunition depot was here. Everywhere you would see trenches, and this was destroyed by high precise Ukrainian artillery strikes. Presumably, we think that these were HIMARSes. This shows how important new Western military weapons and equipment is for Ukraine, because this allows Ukrainian troops to precisely hit places where Russian headquarters and munition depots are located and liberate more and more Ukrainian territories. Maria Avdieva from Ukrainian Kherson.
So HIMARS launchers is the reason why the Russians abandoned the city of Kherson. Why didn't the Russians stand and fight? Why didn't they turn it into the next Stalingrad? And it's because the Russians, A, don't have confidence that their conscripts won't just surrender as soon as they're within white flag waving distance of the Ukrainians, but two, with Western satellites, Western intelligence, and then collaborators on the ground calling in positions, any building or any structure that the Russians would have tried to use, it just would have been eventually HIMARSed. And on my channel 4 months ago, I made this video titled, United States could provide Ukraine with 10,000 HIMARS missiles. This is based on existing stockpile and the size of these aid packages going to Ukraine. And by my estimates, the United States has been supplying Ukraine with these HIMARS missiles between 1,000 and 1,500 every month. And I said in this video 4 months ago, the Russians have a serious problem. What is their answer to this? Can they adapt their air defense systems to shoot down these missiles? Do they have a way of finding and destroying these launchers? And here we are, 4 months later, and they've done nothing. They've just absorbed it. They've told their soldiers on the ground, yeah, every day you're just, going to be hit by HIMARS missiles. Just take it like men, you men of Russia, and keep getting blown up. The problem is the United States will eventually run out of these Gimler rockets to give to the Ukrainians, so we're already coming up with solutions. A Gimler's HIMARS missile costs about $160,000 and takes time to build, manufactured with Lockheed Martin. So here's a solution from Boeing. U.S. weighs sending 100-mile strike weapons to Ukraine. The Pentagon is considering a Boeing proposal to supply Ukraine with cheap, small precision bombs fitted onto abundantly available rockets, allowing Kyiv to strike far behind Russian lines as the West struggles to meet the demand for more arms. So I don't know if which direction the Pentagon is going. They're thinking no to ATACMS, but yes to thousands or tens of thousands of these much cheaper, smaller payload weapons that potentially the Ukrainians could be using starting in January. So this would have a range of 150 kilometers, and I don't know the specifications here, but it combines the GBU-39 SDB with an M26 rocket motor. I guess this is what the concept would look like. And as long as it's accurate and it's cheap, and we can send thousands or tens of thousands of them starting in 2023, this is very bad news for the Russians. And little by little, Ukraine grinds away on the northeastern front. The motivation to keep fighting the Russians is simple for Viking, a Ukrainian soldier near the northeastern front lines, as cold weather and artillery onslaughts bogs down both sides. He wants revenge. I can say that the hardest thing for me is the death of my friends. I had motivation before, but the anger, aggression, and hatred reinforces it. Viking is a 26-year-old tank gunner. We plan to push the Russians to the border and even further, he laughs. So now that Russia has given up on the North Bank, neither side is going to launch serious operations across the river. So there's really only 3 fronts now. There's the Zaporizhia front, the Donbas front in Donetsk, and then the Luhansk or Kharkiv front. The Ukrainians are still doing forward operations in the Luhansk or Kharkiv region. I think they really want to reach this town of Svatove in order to cut off the Russian forces. And the Russian forces, for 5 months now, have been pushing in the Donbas region, trying to at least take the city of Bakhmut. They're pretty incompetent and they're taking horrendous losses, but this is their focus. So the front that's not seeing a lot of action is the Zaporizhia front, but I think both sides are expecting the intensity of operations to increase over the next month or two. If the Ukrainians can make it to the city of Melitopol, that's basically game over for the Crimean Peninsula. So here is Scholz. Russia unable to win against Ukraine. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz believes that Russia is unable to win the war against Ukraine, which enjoys the support of all Western states. So here's the problem that Russia has now, this perception from global leaders, this perception from other countries. If everyone thinks you're losing and going to lose, where is the incentive to help you? And I think even on Russian state TV, they're starting to get nervous. Here's a clip that went viral where they start talking about the possibility that they themselves might end up on trial in the Hague for war crimes.
Они готовятся взять наш Крым, ну а мы делаем единственное, что мы можем делать в этой ситуации, мы бомбим. Мы бомбим каждый день. Бомбим инфраструктуру. Видит Бог, мы этого не хотели. Никто этого не хотел. Мы с тобой этого не хотели. Я прекрасно знаю, что во власти этого не хотели. Мы же вот опять, мы добрые, вежливые и даже в чем-то кроткие. Мы вот такие мягенькие, добренькие, доверчивые, кроткие. А надо ли это? Сейчас, когда мы видим, что каждый день уничтожается инфраструктура, которая помогает Украине воевать, убивать наших людей на уже наших территориях, меня изумляют люди наши, которых я знаю достаточно, к сожалению, много, в том числе очень высоких кругах, которые этого боятся и в каком-то смысле боятся называть вещи своими именами, потому что а как же, что подумают там? Люди, которые боятся какой-то Гааги. Послушайте, надо бояться проиграть, надо бояться опозориться, и надо бояться предать своих людей. Я хочу сказать, что если мы умудримся проиграть, Гаага, условная или конкретная, ждет даже дворника, который брусчатку внутри за Кремлевской стеной подметает.
I'm going to edit this clip slightly to save on time, but I will link it down below in a pinned comment if you want to see the entire thing. It is truly amazing to watch these Russian commentators have self-awareness in real time on national television. So Russia is getting desperate. Russia turns to India for help as Western sanctions bite. And Russia is asking India for help because China has already told them no. Sanctions hit Moscow has asked India to sell it at least 500 different products it urgently needs, including parts for cars, aircraft, and especially trains. Reuters reported this on Tuesday. So what is the answer to Russia asking India for help getting around sanctions? EU members unanimously agreed to punish Russian sanction busters. This is why China doesn't want to get involved with Russia at the moment. The European Union has granted itself legal authority to take action against anyone who helps Russia avoid its sanctions, the EU presidency announced on Monday. So if you're India and Russia is losing anyways, do you want to risk being sanctioned yourself? If you're an Indian company, Indian businessman, do you really want to risk losing your business with Europe or North America to help Russia as it continues to collapse? Next article from the Moscow Times, over a third of Russians admit trying to reduce their food bill. Amid sharply rising prices, inflation is 12.7%, and disruption to supply chains due to Western sanctions, around 35% of Russian citizens say they are trying to reduce the cost of their weekly food shop. Of those who said they were trying to save money on food, 69% also told Russia's state-funded pollster that they were in a difficult financial position. 69% of these people told a Russian pollster that they're in a difficult financial position. And things are only going to get worse for the average Russian as Russia announced its budget for 2023. And Russia plans to spend nearly a third of next year's budget on defense and domestic security to prevent any rioting or revolutions, while slashing funding for schools, hospitals, and roads to pay for its war in Ukraine. And here's a clip I want to share with you that went viral of a Russian conscript, a Russian soldier, being shown by other Russian men how to tie his shoelaces. I'm sure he's from a rural, poor part of Siberia, and this adult Russian man has never worn shoes with laces before. So let me just share a couple seconds of this clip with you.
Вытяни, блядь. Теперь необходимо скрестить. Скрестил. Теперь конец шнурка снизу просунь вот эту дырку, блядь, так называемую. Вот. Затяни. Затяни. Возьми за второй конец. Стой, ничего не делай. Левой рукой возьми второй конец шнурка. Второй конец шнурка.
I'll link this video down below if you want to see how it turns out for this soldier, but what this mobilization and this war in Ukraine has done is it has exposed Russia for being a tremendously poor state. Yes, the cities of St. Petersburg and Moscow look very nice, that's for propaganda purposes, but the rest of Russia is pretty impoverished and underdeveloped, and there are adult men who have never worn shoes with laces before. Final video I have for you is a feel-good one. Several of these have recently gone viral of Ukrainian soldiers filming videos for their mothers to have them not worry about them this winter. This clip is about 57 seconds long. Let's watch it together.
Мам, привіт. Я поїв, тепло одягнувся, шапку одягнув. Іду гуляти. Переживати не треба. Зі мною мої друзі. Ми будемо чемні. Справді це повідомлення не тільки для моєї мами, а для всіх наших мам, які нас люблять, чекають та переживають за нас. Знаю, ви нас ростили не для війни, але ви нас виховували справжніми чоловіками. І коли в нашу країну прийшла біда, ми пішли на захист всього самого найдорожчого, що в нас є. Чекайте, ми обов'язково всі повернемося, і ви знову зможете нас посварити вдома, повчити, що ми неправильно робимо, та чогось смачного нам приготувати. До зустрічі вдома.
That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support my channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.